Hello, everyone, and welcome to part one of my reader's guide to the collection of poetry entitled Red Camaro. My name is Dwaine Rieves, and I want to welcome you to this world that, at least if you focus on the cover of the book, sure looks like it needs tires with deep treads if it's going to get us to where we need to go. Which is true, I think, because of the on the road and off the road travel this quirky living sometimes demands of us. It's an unusual cover, isn't it? I'm interested to know what you're thinking about it, and also, more importantly, what you think about the poems in the book. I want to give a big shout out to K.D. Rennie at the University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point, who designed the cover. Initially, I was hoping it'd be something a little bit more abstract, the typical poetry book cover, which is a little evocative, but to tell you the truth, you don't really know what the poems are about. This one looks like it was made for Goodyear or Firestone advertisement, but it's not. It's for a red Camaro. So in a way, there is a guess here. And what am I guessing this book is about? Well, the answer is largely one word: love. This book contains poems dealing with love. This red Camaro is a vehicle for love, a kind of muscle car in which the word love, I think, works as a verb. This love existing largely for the purpose of travel. That's the point of this: travel. And this metaphor for love has deep treads on the tires, treads that can get through gravel, dirt, and all the other terrain that makes us do knuckle-headed things sometimes, as well as occasionally actions that we have to call evil. In part one of this reader's guide, I'm going to talk about traveling poems, travel. Of course, this is metaphoric travel. Metaphor is front and center in the book. Metaphor in the ancient Greek sense of carrying over this almost mythic empowering of life's transcendent potential through love. This mythic exploration of life is reflected in the opening poem in the book, a poem called Zeus, which is the age-old Greek name for the god of the gods, the god of the weather, the great god of love and lust that was assigned a big man's form by the all-male power brokers of early Greek mythology. So if you look him up, you'll see a picture of a big muscle man most of the time. Looking back on this mythic human condition, reflecting on this challenge of how we must live in bodies that are programmed for joy as well as trouble, is the opening theme of the book. This myth of a godlike man in a heroic but occasionally deeply troubling body. Zeus, in the reflection season, a mirror pooled for the curious God within us to float upon and gaze over as swans do in surface delivery, creations we've become astride our utmost animal, as when knowing comes like ripples stilled in suspension. This essence a swan might float upon when alone and uncontested, long neck curved like a flaw, daring the great body to bear it better. The idea is transformation, a change in perspective. Much as a word must change its meaning depending on the time and place in which that word is used. For example, the word draft, D-R-A-F-T, draft. A draft like a chilly breeze or a draft on your checking account, which way back in the 1960s when I was growing up could culminate in your folks going into even deeper debt, the kind of debt a banker might cover, but would show up on your folks' checking account statement in red lettered numbers instead of the more proper black digits. Of course, back in the late 60s, the word draft had another meaning, one that was all over the news every evening. The draft calling up boys like me for the war in Vietnam. By the time I received my draft number, the troops were headed for Cambodia. And my number was a high calling up one, which only seemed to increase my teenage love for a brand new Camaro, which I knew my daddy couldn't possibly afford. And yet, down at the Chevrolet place, I couldn't take my eyes off that gorgeous car. The poem is called Overdrawn. Overdrawn. My father never mentioned Nixon, nor the draft, a cringeworthy word for called up or a chill, a banker's take on a payback plan. He never mentioned a letter saying low is high, my draft number like lust for a red Camaro, base price, bare bottom in a 1970 remake of the model. When I said they might keep it to remember, he said nothing of black vinyl upholstery, bucket seats, or an egg crate grill, chrome lips befitting Nixon. Never thought he'd work out a draft on his account, a bank statement in the mail, one column read monthly. A stick shift, no less, a chrome C on the hood, a C as in Cambodia or college, a fine ride, though he never said the draft had anything to do with those 6 cylinders in a need I never guessed we shared. I doubt my father ever really feared Nixon or years he knew we could never outrun in a hot Camaro, a chill in every red number where my rifle should go. In retrospect, I've sometimes thought my father's choice to take out a loan was a pretty dumb thing to do for his boy. After all, that money would have served me and my sisters, the whole family, in fact, much better had it gone to a college fund or a savings account or maybe applied to the ever increasing debt down at the grocery store. But then I think back on the world we lived in, and the need to sometimes get out in a red Camaro sure felt like a smart thing to do. A loving thing, a loving feeling that even a banker seemed to understand. Which brings us to the poem I've called Power Take Off. It's a poem that takes its name from the PTO, the acronym you'd recognize if you were a farmer like my dad was a farmer, because the power takeoff, or the PTO, is the turning shaft on the back end of a tractor, the whirling rod that empowers whatever implements you might hook up behind the tractor, say a bush hog, or maybe a hay baler, or a cattle feed grinder. We had a doozy of a cattle feed grinder, wind up covered in dust when that thing was working well. But we need to remember the PTO, because the PTO is one of the most dangerous parts of the tractor. It rotates. So if your t-shirt gets caught in the PTO, the turning shaft might choke you to death. So you sure want to be careful when you hook up your equipment to the PTO of your tractor. The risk is in the action, which is another reason why the tire treads of love have to be crisp and deep as we work with the implements we need to go. Power takeoff. Tough world, this world. Tough as farmers and tractors with treacherous parts that turn because it takes power in what you hook up to a bush hog to set the blades to turning one for one with energy transmitted via the semi-phallic part that takes your hands to hitch up, to manipulate until a spring-loaded pin clicks into a place. I often thought I loved my mother more than my father, thought love tougher than a world I might work out in if working might click me into that place where metal meets metal, in making me think love might be farmed like a worry of one or another. My father, a fine but tough teacher, tougher than this tough world is, graspable by design, dangerous if you forget. Danger powers the connection. That danger powers the connection is not a particularly comforting truth to remember when it comes to love. And yet I have to believe there is an authenticity within the idea, a truth, where beauty is displayed as well with its dirt and grease and grime as it is in a glossy patina. To illustrate my point, I want to close with a poem that takes a gritty human perspective on one of the most loving subjects in Christian imagery. And what could be more loving, more soothing, more comforting than the nativity scene? Baby Jesus, surrounded by his adoring father Joseph, and beside him a Mary ever so angelic as she cradles her son. Can you imagine what the Renaissance painters have done with this image? We all know. But I have a hunch the scene was a pretty upsetting situation, with animals bawling and perhaps Mary yelling as Joseph reaches out to catch the Lord God. Mary, the baby's blood soaked, all of which is to say, I can imagine the relationship between Mary and Joseph was not easy, not perfect, not consistently comforting, which makes the true image of love a scene far beyond any Renaissance artist's perfection. The poem is called Pageant. Pageant. We are kids in a line, each with a gift to place below the manger. We are stand-ins, symbols of needy people in far-off places, how they too must give what they can. I'm dressed as a beggar from Palestine, my box empty, the air inside it from our place in Mississippi, a prop. My father never made it out of Mississippi, just his army picture, dark hair wavy as the night. He almost slapped my mother. God damn, no wife of mine smokes cigarettes, like smoking's against the law on wives in Mississippi. My mother says he must think she shouldn't work either. Wars play out like make-do places in Mississippi. Days her time at the plant, 4 to midnight his. A Salem or two before he gets home. I use fly spray to clear the air before it's too late. Hides the smoke. He'll never know. It works, I think, he never says. Maybe it reminds him of places he didn't get out of in Mississippi. Up close, the doll baby smells like plastics. Spotlight shouldn't smoke, but all stand-ins know better. Baby Jesus probably cried a lot more than he grinned. Joseph mired in stink and Mary cussing. Details my folks don't talk about. This place, that holy. And also too holy not to remember, as this world was, or as it seems now, and might be even more so in the future. As if this messy kind of love might travel just fine when it assumes the audacity of a red Camaro that for the life of us, rational people would say we could not afford. And yet here's the book, here's the vehicle, here are the poems. Let me know what you think about them. Part two of this reader guide gets into the troubling poems, some of the challenging situations that take these deep treads and keep us steady because these treads hold on to all this grime and joy and wonder and goodness where the world might take us. Thank you, and buckle up for the next ride in a red Camaro. You, I say.